just going to ask you a little background about your early life, and then we'll talk about you being a code talker. Tell me when you're rolling, Scott. Okay. It's nice here in the sun, isn't it?
It sure is.
It feels a lot better.
Oh yeah, a lot different.
It's cold there in the shade.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing the difference being in the sun makes. Okay. First, I'll just identify that today is Saturday, March the 6th of 2004, and I'm Pam Stevenson doing the interview here at the Heard Museum, and I'll let you give me your name so we'll have it pronounced correctly.
My name is Merril L. Sandoval.
Merril is your first name?
That's right.
M-E?
M-E-R-R-I-L.
Okay, Sandoval. Okay. When were you born, and where were you born?
I was born in 1925, and I was born in Farmington, New Mexico, not in the town, but about 30 miles out on the reservation, the eastern part of Navajo reservation.
And was your family sheep herders there, or?
Oh yeah, those days we had a lot of sheep. I mean, families had a lot of sheep, and that was our chore. Most of the Kotog, I think, herded sheep, and we done that between school vacations.
Where did you go to school?
I went to that Farmington, New Mexico, near the Colorado border, and it happened to be a church school, a boarding school. Most of those schools were boarding schools. It was either run by the government or churches.
So you had to leave your family to go to school?
Yes, I left 9 months out of a year. I was at that school, and then 3 months out of that, we're back on a reservation.
Did you like school?
I did at a certain time, but of course it was a different type of environment once we got there, because I didn't speak any English. I didn't read in English, and I didn't talk English. I had to learn English.
That must have been hard.
It was hard in the beginning, and those days I only started right off 6th grade, right off the bat. There was no such thing as kindergarten or Head Start in those days, and nobody graduated in the 8th grade either. There was no graduation, just high school.
Where did you go to high school?
Right there, same place, until I wanted to go.
Blair? See those two little dots at the bottom?
Yeah.
Those are always there. They're in the viewfinder.
Okay.
But they're not on the page.
Okay, sure.
If you're worried about those.
I was a little worried.
Yeah, they're just in the viewfinder.
Okay.
Someone I wrote it to, I think, left it pointing at some lights.
Ready to rock.
Okay. So, in high school, were you a good student?
I think I was. I liked the school, and I liked my subjects, and being a church school, we had the Bible as one of the curriculum. So we learned a lot about the Bible there.
So, what were you going to do after school?
I really don't know, other than finding a job, I guess, and I had no thought about the time, and I wanted to learn the English language.
Well, you must have learned the English language by high school, and
Yeah, by the time I was sophomore, I was pretty good fluently, and both Navajo and English language.
so how did enlist in the military?
Well, one church day on a Sunday, after we got out of church, we heard that the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor. Of course, none of us knew where Pearl Harbor was. But later, through history, it was on the Hawaiian Islands. And later on, we found out there was different branches of services, like the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and Air Force, Coast Guard. And one day, there was a couple that came on the campus, and we happened to find out they were from the Marine Corps. And what they were doing, they were interviewing some high school students that could speak Navajo and English fluently. We just figured that they were taking us into the Marine Corps, and everybody wanted to go. As you know, at that time when the attack was so sudden, surprisingly, compared to what happened in New York and Washington recently, everybody sort of want to go. They want to fight or do something. And I was only 16 years old at the time. And I had a brother that was a little ahead of me. He was 2 years older than me, and he volunteered. What they were saying, that we had to volunteer to take us into the Marine Corps and pass some tests, plus get permission from our parents. So, because my brother went in, they took him, and he qualified and shipped him off from Santa Fe, New Mexico. But I wanted to go too and follow my brother. But they told him, no, you're too young. You got to wait one more year until you turn 17. Then you can ask your dad. And of course, when I had a dad, then my mother had deceased already. So it wasn't too long. I turned 17. Right away, I volunteered. They were still coming around. And they were doing all over the reservation, not only our school, maybe 4 or 5 other boarding schools on the reservation. So what they were doing, recruiting. But we didn't know what, we just knew they were going to the Marine Corps.
So you went in at 17?
Yes, when I turned 17.
And where did you go? Where did they take you?
I went through the same process, the induction at Santa Fe, and took us by train down to San Diego, down to the Marine Corps base, through attend the boot camp, which we did. And
Had you ever been on a train before?
No, never have.
What did you think about that?
I think it was quite an experience, but when we got hungry, we didn't have that much money. Everything was so high. A sandwich was so high that, but we stood it. It didn't take long to get to San Diego.
So had you ever been off the reservation like that to go to?
Only on sports. Maybe I went into Colorado, and that was the closest state, and Arizona. That's about the only chance I had to go off from the school in sports events.
So what did you think of San Diego?
Well, San Diego was something new, a big town, big city, nice place, a lot different from what we just got out of our livelihood there on the reservation, a lot of change.
What was boot camp like?
It was okay. I know they teach you a lot of things, like discipline, cleanliness, obedience. Even you learn how to swim. I didn't know how to swim when I got in there, because there was no such thing as pools and lakes or anything like that. They had a river there, but you couldn't swim in there. So I learned that, and as far as physical training, it didn't bother the Navajos at all. because we came right off the reservation, and we're out there herding sheep. We had to get up early. That's the daily deal. When we were young kids, you get up before the sun comes up and take care of your sheep and come back in the evening. And so getting up in the morning was no problem, and physical training was no problem. We're already used to it. We're adapted to living outside, sleeping outside, and didn't bother us. So the only thing that we had to learn a lot is marching. There's a lot of type of marching that you had to learn, and that's the way I went through. I'm pretty sure the rest of the Navajo recruits had that experience also.
So how did you get involved with the code then?
Well, after we graduated, a bunch of us graduated from boot camp, and final ceremony, they transferred us to another camp. Well, in between there was a rifle range. We had to learn there 2 weeks of all types of rifles, shooting, all calibers, all. So then we had to qualify there, and when we finished there after 2 weeks, they took us another camp, which is Camp Pendleton, where Oceanside, California is. And they had one of the biggest training camp for Marines there. And they took us there, and we were isolated in the barracks. I think there was about, at the time I was transferred there was over 200 Navajos in one barrack. And we found out they had a school there that we had to attend, but they didn't tell us what for.
So what did
Until we got into the classroom. That's when we found out. And when we got in, there was a whole bunch of Navajos in there, in classes. They told us that they were going to use our language to go into communication for the Marine Corps. That's when we found out. The first time we found out.
What did you think of that?
Well, I didn't think much of it. As well, as long as I can speak both languages, I guess it's okay. It shouldn't be hard, I figured. Well, we found out it was harder.
Tell me about it. How was it hard?
Because we have to memorize it. Because there was no such thing as a Navajo dictionary on the reservation. So, on top of that, we had to learn English in military terms, military equipment, military rank, and military, all the what you use in war, like a bomb, or because there was no such word as a bomb, no Navajo word. No Navajo word for grenade, artillery, dive bomber, aircraft carrier, and then ranks. No such word for colonels or generals or sergeants. Same with units. No such word for battalion or regiment or company. Those had to be devised before we got to school. Of course, there was a lot more added when the war went on. And we improvised a lot. By the time we got to Guam, Saipan, and Tinian, it was starting to get perfected so much, it just came natural to us. And it all had to be memorized. We couldn't be carrying any references out there in battle, so we memorized everything. At that age, I guess we were pretty good at memorizing. That's the hard part of it. But once we perfected a lot, improvising a lot, and adding some more, it came out real good.
So was everybody able to do that, or was it only certain people that were good enough to do that?
While some they couldn't pass it in the States, like Camp Pendleton where I was. So what they did, they just held them over or joined another class or joined another unit when they do qualify, and then start going overseas. Some had to be discharged.
So did you have any trouble passing that?
No, I didn't have any trouble. Of course, we learned a lot of things too, not only code, Navajo code, but we had to go into other equipment like what the other armed forces use, like semaphore panels and all those things, ship-to-shore communication. They even have flag communications from airplanes and all that, panels they call it, and operating radios. Those are old equipment then. We had to learn all that.
So when you passed the test and graduated, where did they send you?
They keep you there until they start forming some more units to start a division. And I just so happened to be there when they were forming the 5th Marine Division. And when that was completed, then off we went from San Diego to Hawaii.
You went to Hawaii?
Hawaii. That was our rest camp. The big island, Hawaii. Because Hawaii has got about 8 islands, but we were down way on the other end, the biggest island they call Hawaii. And there's 2 volcanoes there, bigger than the Frisco Peaks. And they're forever busy, active. At night, our mess kits will be shaken all the time. That's where our rest camp was. The 4th Marine Division was on Maui. It's another island north of Big Island, Hawaii.
Which division were you with?
5th Marine Division.
And then where did you go from there?
We trained there quite a bit, and from there we went to Pearl Harbor. That was our starting point all the time, Pearl Harbor. Then they didn't tell us where we were going. And all they told us that we were going to an island, not even giving us any name or anything. We're going to take that island, invade that island. And I went to Saipan, but I didn't get off there. I was reserve with the 2nd Marine Division by then, and from there later I joined, I was in the 5th Marine Division. All of a sudden we headed out again. We went north toward Japan, and finally they told us that the name of the island was Iwo Jima. That's where we landed February 19, 1945. And it was a rough landing. And we had so many ships. I think we had about 10 or 12 aircraft carriers. They were smaller aircraft carriers then, but we needed the planes. And we had battleships, 6 or 7 battleships, cruisers, destroyers. Well, that place was crowded. And that island was so fortified, the Japanese were still there. They were all underground. And then Mount Suribachi on one end, they had tunnels in that one too. So when we landed, I landed near that mountain, Suribachi, we're underneath. And from Mount Suribachi, we were an easy target. There's a beach right there. That beach was a mess. Dead Marines, equipment, oh boy. And if the Navy didn't get us in straight to the beach, the thing was that our little boats would start going over. Ours turned over. So I actually had to swim ashore. If they see, they're in a hurry. They want to unload us and get back over and unload. The Navy, coxswain they call them, the ones that guided our landing boats. But there was plenty of equipment on that shore.
So your boat turned over?
Yeah.
Ooh, that must have been scary.
We lost a lot of equipment, yeah. And we got ashore okay. But that island's so hard to climb on, and where we landed was kind of a hilly, volcanic ashes. It's just like walking on sand dune. trying to climb. And there was Marines all over, live ones and dead ones. And see, I was with headquarters signal company. I was with a major general all the time. Major general and a brigadier general. I was 2-star general and 1-star general and a bunch of colonels. And there was about 5 or 6 of us. Since we're in headquarters, that's where we were to transmit messages down the line, down to the regiments and battalions, companies, all the way up. And they had Marines, Navajo code talkers down the line. We had a lot of work to do.
So you didn't lose your radio when the boat turned?
Yeah, by that time our radios were advanced. We had Motorola radios that we carried on our back. You know, long antennas and phone deal. And pretty handy. All they had to do was get a piece of paper, colonel or generals, and just hand it to us. It's either an order or instructions on troop movement, any stuff like that, and informations, commands, and they give it to us, and we just go to our radio, translate it in the code. And on the other end, the Navajo code talker receives it, and he translates it back to English and give it to their commanders. And it's so fast. It just took only maybe a minute. While the other code they've been using, they call it American Morse code. All the other branch of service use those, but the Japanese were breaking those. It's just easy for them to break those. So, but they didn't break ours, and that was slower. Ours was a lot. If their messages took 15 minutes, ours took 2 minutes. That's how fast it was. And no mistakes. That's the way we were trained. So we did our job that way.
Did you know at the time when you were doing this how important that was?
They told us it would be very important, and we learned that communication is really critical in any war. If you didn't have communication, you might as well not move ahead. That's the idea, to move ahead. And if you didn't have any communication, you might as well stay put or go home. We found out that. And later, as it went on, we start to realize that our code was doing a very good job, and we kept it up and we did it. No matter how they tried to interfere with us, the Japanese, every day and night they tried to interfere with us. But our messages went through. It really did.
Well, it sounds like you really risked your life there.
Sure we did.
Landing on the beach.
Yeah. I was there about 30 days, and the island was not all secured, but there was 22,000 Japanese there. I think there was only, by the time I left, they figured there was only about 1,000 of them left. And we had pretty close to 80,000 Marines on that island. And the island was only 8 miles long. And the widest part, about 2.5 miles. So we're pretty crowded on there. But the Japanese were underneath and we were on top.
They were hiding underneath.
Boy, they were protected. They had 25 years to fortify that island, we found out.
Now, I heard some people, they were concerned that you would be mistaken for Japanese, that the code breakers looked a lot like the Japanese.
Well, you've seen, I don't know, whether you've seen Wind Talker or not. I believe in it about 50%. Some of them are real true, some are true Marine action, and all that action is Marine action, but very little demonstration of code talking. And they didn't use this, only one Navajo on there. and he got killed at the end. And I can always say, wherever I speak, the reason that movie was made, that we all had bodyguards. One example, on Iwo Jima, after there was a lull there, kind of quiet down a little bit, we had two other Navajos that took over our jobs while we rested a little bit. And then another Marine Navajo talker named Wilson Price and I, a good buddy of mine, we decided to take a little walk. Not very far, just to stretch and do something. And we didn't go less than 40 yards. Here comes a Marine lieutenant and a Marine sergeant with their guns. They were ready to kill us. And we told them that we were Navajo code talkers. They didn't believe us. See, a lot of those other units didn't know we were there in our job. A lot of them didn't know. And they thought that we were Japanese, two of them. And they were ready to kill us. And we told them, my buddy told them, well, to prove it to you, why don't you take us to your command post? We knew there's radios down there. And a lot of those radio men, knew about us. And sure enough, they marched us over. But they still didn't believe us. They still had the guns on us, on our backs. And before we got to their command posts, two Marines jumped up over there. Two sergeants, I think it was. They got their guns and yelled at those two that were marching us over there, using these cuss words, SOB and all that. You leave our code talkers alone, or we're going to shoot you guys. So they just took off. That's where we were saved. The reason is there were Japanese coming through, live ones, and getting dead Marines up front, their uniform, all their equipment, helmet, everything. And they walk through. Somehow they come through, infiltrate, either for food, water, or just to get in the back. They thought we were two of them. And it happened to be artillery outfit. See, artillery outfit is always close to us, our command posts. And they were camouflage. And we didn't see the camouflage part. That's why we were walking right in front of them. And
So you needed those guards to protect you.
that's what I would say. Where's my guard? Our guard. Unless we had them sleeping back there, I don't know. But I heard, though, that some of them did have. But just one example, we didn't have any guards.
So you didn't have guards.
Didn't even stop us or anything, nobody.
Did you realize how much you looked like Japanese before you went over there?
I imagine we did. No, not really. Not really until saw them in person. I mean, their features and color, mostly they're Japanese, and we've seen pictures, I guess, they had black hair and all that. And of course, being out there, we could look like anything. Anybody.
Any other stories about your experience that you want to tell?
After that campaign operations, we usually go back to our rest camp, clear back to Hawaii, the big island Hawaii. But before we got back, there were a lot of other islands and stopovers, and after that we trained some more. We're ready to go again, and we took off again. We didn't know where we were going then either. They won't tell you, because the Japanese already know through not our code talker, but code talking deal, but through the other means of communication. they'll decode it and they'll know troop movements and everything else, where we're coming from, where we're going, all that. In fact, Tokyo Rose was famous for that. I guess you heard about her. She always broadcast from Japan. She always said the Marines are going here, Marines are going there, your girlfriends are all with somebody else back in the States, all that stuff. And so that was the longest time I've been aboard ship, 45 days. Just maneuvering around, island to island, or here and there. And just about that time, we heard there's 2 atom bombs were dropped. One on Honshu and one on Kyushu, in the island of Japan. And we heard that the Japanese did not surrender. And it went on and on. And then one day we heard that they are going to surrender. Sure enough. But we were told later that we were going in to invade Japan. A whole bunch of us. Maybe it's a good thing we didn't. I wouldn't be here, maybe. They were well fortified. But we kept going as occupation. We were still armed. Co-talkers were still with our radios, just in case. We were told to go ahead and land. But it was a different spot from where we were supposed to land. And that was a beach. They could have just murdered us there. But we went in another port, a place named Sasebo. They have a real nice harbor right there. And we went on in there. I guess the Japanese were told to stay in their homes. Don't come out on the streets, we're coming in. Sure enough, they did. We had no problem. We just got ashore, marched down the street to the closest barracks they had. It was a naval base, Naval Academy there. We took over that academy, and that's where we lived for the next 6 months. But the Japanese, they just looked at us. They were in their houses, businesses and all that. And later on, we got acquainted with them and had a little liberty. They were nice people, just like the United States. Real pretty country. Of course, they were, more of a poverty level where we were. And most of the mothers there didn't know where their boys were. They knew they took them off to war somewhere. They didn't know. And we got acquainted with them, and that's where they thought also. They wondered who we were. The Navajos and other Indians, I guess, too. And they'll point to us. They'll say, "You Nissan? Nissan?" And no, we're American Indians. Then they'll point, "India? Oh, India? No, not from India. American gene, American Indians. Oh, okay, American gene, Indio." And we found out later what Nissan meant. That was American-born Japanese, a Nissan. That's what they thought we were, till they found out that we were American Indians. That's in my experience. And of course, we disarmed them, and boy, they had a lot of weapons. All their plants, manufacturing deal, new weapons, old weapons are placed where we're supposed to land with well over fortified, big guns from the hills and all that. We would have had a rough time going in there.
So when did you finally come back to the States?
6 months later, in 1946, March of 46, we came back on a slow boat to China again. It took us 2 weeks to get back to San Francisco. Of course, we stopped here and there. We had our Liberty, some island, and beer bus or whatever they had, and that's it. And
So did you
that was our reward, I guess.
How
I was in there from 1943 to 1946, about practically 3 years. And I finally made corporal. From
What did you do after that? After this?
well, they wanted me to stay in there. You know, like all Marines do that. I said, I know. I says, if you give me one more stripe, I'll be a sergeant. I can stay then. He said, no, it'd be hard to do it right now. Okay, bye-bye. I'm out. Well, the first thing I had to do was finish my high school, because I was a sophomore when I went in at 17, and I went to school in Riverside, California. There's an Indian Institute there. They call it Sherman. It's an Indian school. I think it's still there, but different type. In 1946. There were a lot of veterans there. They entered a lot of veterans, you know, different tribes, Navy, Army, Marine Corps, and all of it. And we were treated like kings there, over the students. And we just went there 1 year. They allowed only 1 year. And of course we were kind of separate, you know, we were older and had our own liberty and stuff. And I finished my junior year there, and I had to go somewhere else. I didn't go back to Farmington, New Mexico. I went to Albuquerque. That's where I finished my senior year. And after I finished my senior year, I decided I got to do something, get a job, learn something. But at that time, that was 1948, the tribe, or we didn't know anything about scholarship. Nobody ever mentioned scholarship. But the only thing that we knew, they had vocational trainings all over the country. So I decided to go to vocational school. And the only other place, well, these Indian schools had them, but not the small ones. The big one was over in Haskell, Kansas, Lawrence, Kansas. They had another big Indian Institute there. And it was a big, it's junior college now. And they had trades of all kinds. So I picked to be a machinist. And so I went to vocational training for 2 years, and I graduated. And they hired me there during the summer while I was looking for employment. Excuse me. And the only place I got hired first was in Kansas City, Missouri, as a machinist. And that was way out of town, southern part, and for Bendix Aviation. Here was an atomic energy machine shop plant. It was restricted areas here and there all over. I was there 3 years as a machinist. And I had a girlfriend at Haskell, and she was from out here, western New Mexico, Arizona, in the reservation. I married her in 1951. That's when I resigned over there, and I came back to Arizona. I'm still with her, by the way, 52 years. Going on 53 years. She's here today. And I laid around Tuba City for a while, you know, about 3 months. There was no such thing as a machine shop job there and all that, unless you build your own shop, which was expensive and all that. I finally decided to look for another job, machine shop. I figured my in-laws are getting tired of me, so I know I can qualify anywhere, so I applied here in Phoenix, I applied in Albuquerque, I applied in Barstow, I applied in Page, Flagstaff, Winslow, and I was hired here over all of them. And that was a job down here by Sky Harbor Airport. It's an old company, I don't think they are. I think they were Allied now, Signal. Used to call it Air Research Manufacturing Company. It was the only plant down there across from Sky Harbor. and then they start building here. And Motorola was the only other plant. There was 2 plants, and aluminum, Reynolds Aluminum was the other one. That's it. That was in the 50s, 52. And I got hired here in the machine shop. About a week later, Albuquerque writes to me, Sandia Corporation. They want me to come to work. Everything's ready. And so I had to wire back. I said, no, I already got a job, thanks. And that had to be another atomic energy plant between Bendix Aviation, Kansas City, Missouri, Sandia Corporation. Then it went on to Los Alamos. That's where the laboratory is. There was all atomic energy projects.
They were in demand, weren't they?
Yeah. I passed Q clearance. That's the highest you can go on security. Anyway, that's where I live here. 10 years. Brought my wife down. We had 3 kids by the end of 10 years. Then we decided, my wife decided, she was working before and she got lonesome for the reservation. I said, well, we can go back. And we bought a home here. Bell Road was just desert out there. Nothing. They built the first homes there. Bell Road. Campobello, how they call it, still out there. There was an acre and a house. I bought that in 1953, I think it was. So then we moved back up. Now it's in the middle of town. Oh, everything was nothing out there. Just the racetrack was there. It was the only one.
So you've seen a lot of changes.
Yeah, that was in the 50s.
So all that time, your work as a code talker was still secret, huh?
Yeah. It started to come out 69, 68 or 69. They finally declassified it then, I guess, the Marine Corps and the Navy. And by that time, we were old guys.
So you kept the secret all those years?
Oh, yeah. We were sworn to secrecy when we got discharged. They told us that we might use you again in case, we go back to war. But Korean War started about 5 years later or something like that. But they didn't use us over there. One of the reasons, I think, was there was a lot of armed forces over there. Marines, Navy, Army, Air Force, and other countries like Australia and India. And it wouldn't do any good. Just the Marine Corps would have used us. But they had to help each other. But I heard propaganda, I don't know, that they were thinking that we might go to war with Russia. That's at that time. So that's as far as it went. We just plumb forgot it too. That secrecy. Until later. It came out when we had a reunion in '68 in Window Rock.
And then you started to get some honors. And
That's when it started, yeah. Still to this day, I've been going east all over. The farthest I went is Albany. Speaking tours, we do have speaking tours. And my contract runs out in August. We have an agent in New York City, and they call it Greater Talent Outfit in New York City. They're the ones that book us. It's usually universities or colleges or museums or military bases. They're the ones that request the code talkers, but they have to foot the bill. That's up to the agents, I guess. They set that up for us.
Who would ever have thought that by learning the code that you'd end up with an agent?
Right.
How do you feel about all of those experiences that you've had today, looking back?
It's quite an experience. And sometimes you figure, well, maybe we should have done it this way or that way, but I don't think it's really, we hardly had any mistakes. I think we've done our job the right way, and that's what a lot of our commanding officers know. They're the only ones that can tell the world how we did it, how we operated. A lot of them are now deceased, and of course they were older than us. I'm one of the youngest one that went in 1943. I was 17, so I'm 79 right now. I got an older brother that went ahead of me. He's still living. He's a code talker. He lives over in New Mexico. He still travels around. He's 80. He's almost 81 now.
When you travel around, and especially on the reservation, when you talk to the young people today, what kind of advice do you give them?
We do. We try to keep it as mellow as it could be. We don't talk much about the experience in war, what we've seen, what we experienced, and what we did is just to carry on that language. That's our main topics all the time, because a lot of kids nowadays, they don't know their language, original language. I don't know why. Even though they have a Navajo father, Navajo mother, some of them don't speak or understand Navajo. But they do have bilingual schools now on the reservation. I got grandchildren that come home, they talk Navajo to me, and they're learning, because the language is very important to us to keep it going. Don't lose it. It's used in religion, it's used in stories, it's used in ceremonials, and everywhere. Now they're going into books, and it's hard to read, but they do have text on it, and the kids are learning it real easy, better than I am. I can't read what somebody else writes those things, and that's the reason that it's still sacred to us, and we wanted to keep it that way in our culture and tradition.
I guess some people ask too why, as a Native American, you were willing to fight for the United States after you'd lost your lands.
That's the big question. All the way over the country,
What do you tell
all the way over to Europe and stuff. They still ask us that. Well, main thing is defend, I guess. Defend our homeland, just like our ancestors tried to do. They're still doing it. And it's just a tradition that our chiefs, our warriors, we act like warriors in the old days, just like the same way. Dedication to our homeland. Even though maybe we had treaties, we're not supposed to have arms anymore with the government. And still they use us. But we still have to get permission or okay from our tribal council. If the council says no, we're a sovereign nation now. We don't have to fight your war like we did clear back to Columbus Day. All the Indian tribes that were there then, they fought all kinds of wars. They either helped the French, they either helped the British, the Spaniards, whatever they did, they were still fighting. And so we're doing the same thing. That's why. And I think we're dedicated to our country and our homeland and safety of our people nowadays, and that's why we don't hesitate if we're called upon to fight people's war.
Thousands of Navajos and other Native Americans have fought in the wars, or
Sure.
veterans, but only a few of you were code talkers.
That's right. Approximately 420 are listed as co-talkers.
Pretty special group.
Yeah. Now we only got less than 100, I think. Not very many. Even our association, that's why we have these uniforms. I think the most we had was 50 members, but maybe only 20 show up for meetings every month.
Okay, well, I think that's all the questions I had for you. Is there anything you wanted to tell me that I didn't ask you?
One other thing that we did a lot is communicate casualties. That's kind of a sad type of communication. During the day's fighting, during the night's fighting, we had to transmit to the command on board ship, to the Navajos on board ship, with the admirals, generals, high-ranking people. They want to know what's going on. We report it every evening, how many Marines were killed, how many Marines were wounded, and how many Marines were missing. Same way in the morning. In the morning we did the same transmission so the enemy wouldn't know. Psychologically, we done that.
That must have been hard.
A lot of, yeah, it is hard. And you see them come in by the truckloads and then put them away. Yeah. That's the sad part about it.
Yeah. But somebody had to do it, I guess.
Yep.
Did you want to get a couple of...
Start there for a second.
Getting warm in the sun here?
Nice.
Yeah, it's good.
Mhm.
Birds are enjoying it behind you in the cactus.
Yeah,
Jumping around. Yeah, it's going to be a nice day, it looks like.
oh, I think so. The way the forecast was.
Did you get much snow in Tuba City?
Very little. We don't get much snow like Flagstaff. Pretty country though, this side of Flag.
Yeah,
Snow on the pines.
yeah.
That means it snowed a lot
So when did you drive down?
yesterday. Yeah, but pretty close to a foot, all the way down to the rim. Then you start climbing down Verde.
We need that snow.
Yeah, a lot of runoff. Yeah, water's already running. Should see New River up here. 30 miles.
Like a river.
It's fall. It's full.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, why we call it that? Most of the time it's dry. People don't
Oh,
like
yeah.
river.
Yeah. Yeah, my kids are all grown up. I had 5 of them, my wife and I.
Where do they live? Do they still live around?
Some are around, and one lives in Santa Fe. She's here today. She works for Los Alamos. She's an engineer over there, software engineer. She's way up with the professors and laboratory and all that stuff.
That your kids are all proud of their dad.
I think they are. Yeah, and one is traveling. He's supposed to be back today, 2 o'clock, from Newport, West Virginia. He's an engineer also. He's a power plant engineer. See, they have power plant all over the world. So he goes all over the world. I think his next trip is to Taiwan. He's been there before. He's been to China a couple times. He's been to South America, Europe, wherever they call him from. I imagine he's a good worker. He trains them too, like Puerto Rico people and all that.
Must be good if they send him all those places.
Yeah. He's getting tired of it once in a while. His family's up in Tuba City. He's the oldest. He's in his 50s, 51 or so. And I don't blame him, but he flies a lot all over the world, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like fun, but when you're really doing it, it's not much fun
I know.
to sit around airports and,
Oh, yeah.
you know.
That's the worst place to be at,
Yeah.
especially when you're going to fly.
Right. That's the
Yeah,
worst
you
part
have
of
to
it,
go
is
and
waiting around.
take all your clothes off and you're gone.
Now, did you get the Congressional Medal of Honor? Is that what that is?
This one here is just a medal for a reunion in Chicago.
Yeah, your Congressional Medal, I bet you keep that at home.
Those are
Safe
big.
place.
They're heavy.
Yeah.
They're too heavy. They're in a box.
Too heavy to wear.
Yeah.